This is my right foot. This was cast from plaster. I made a mold of my right foot. You can see the swelling of the ankle. Tibia and fibula come down and basically lock into all the structures of the foot and ride on the talus bone. The talus is really your ankle, and my talus was misaligned. It was tilted such that after repeated wear over many, many decades of my life, all the cartilage was gone. So every time I took a step, it was just bone on bone, which is actually quite painful. My name is Anthonie Fishera. I'm a painter and a professor of painting and drawing at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. Been painting for 40 years. Since 2014, I have had both of my ankles totally fused. So I've got 6 really nice stainless steel long screws that fuse the tibia right into the subtalar joint. It's a very long recovery from the surgery. So after I had my right foot corrected in 2014, I was in a full cast for a couple of months and a walking boot for several months after that. So during the summer, I was unable to put any weight whatsoever on my foot. I couldn't even put it down on the ground. But I had an old-fashioned steel chair with little tiny wheels I could move around on. And over a period of 6 to 8 weeks, I made many, many dozens of drawings. I was working from life. I was observing heads and portraits. My physical problems and the pain that I endured just trying to move around in my studio, combined with some of the psychic sort of depression pain around making some of the art I was making. So I feel that I adopted this sort of milieu, this ethos of the suffering artist. And most of the writers I was drawn to were of a similar bent, and the painters, certainly the painters that I love, are all in that, like my pantheon of great painters. They all seemingly suffered a lot. But this is a painting of a flayed lamb. I actually literally had a flayed lamb in the studio. I always worked from observation. I worked from life. I couldn't do it out of my head, or certainly not just look at a photograph of a flayed lamb. The painting has a lot to do with suffering and redemption and a lot of religious import, which kind of leads into the aspect of art making that I had talked about before, about suffering, about having grown up when I did and going to art school when I did, and having the particular heroes that I have, sort of inculcated a sense that art, generally, if it's really good art, if it's genuine art, has some basis of suffering in it, that the artist is struggling to get something evoked, something communicated that wouldn't just happen easily, but has to happen through some measure of suffering. And I think that came to a culmination with my ankle surgeries, when I was both in physical pain and, frankly, in a lot of emotional, psychic pain about the loss of mobility, worrying if, in fact, I would be able to walk again. I kept moving around in this chair with the small wheels, pirouetting and spinning and moving from one part of the studio to the other, just rolling over the drawings, not just disregarding the drawings on the floor, just kind of ignoring them and just marking them all up. My studio is very messy. I had a lot of dry medium like charcoal and dried paint and chalk and various things. And quite unconsciously, I started building up layers of these wheel marks from the chair all over the drawings I had been making. It suddenly dawned on me that the things that I was making on the floor, without any particular goal or forethought, to me were more appealing, a lot more interesting as drawings than what I was trying to make at the easel. And instead of a parallel plane now, I have this oblique plane with the floor, and it allows me to work at many different scales. I can work both small and enormous. I've done some paintings that are about 12 by 15 feet on the floor. I guess perhaps because of the surgery, I was very open-minded. Maybe some of my ego barriers that would normally be in the way were down. I think I was perhaps feeling more vulnerable, I don't know, but I was very open-minded. And I started creating new types of machines, equipment that I could use. At the very beginning, I even just put a bunch of heavy rocks on the same chair that I had been sitting in when I was able to stand up. That led me to create about at least a dozen different heavy pieces of equipment with all kinds of different shaped wheels. The scooters the kids use, they're sort of narrow, they have a different profile than a really wide flat wheel. I started using gears and the pulleys, stainless steel pulleys that are used for garage doors that sometimes would register like a parallel line or even a triple line. I just started inventing lots of different ways of combining wheels, different intervals. I started screwing broom handles and things into big wooden scrub brushes. I'd pull out all the bristles from the scrub brush and I'd mount a wheel to that so there would be an angle to the handle, and I'd stack it all up with steel weights, steel weights that you'd use from a gym, and manipulate it like this, like move it all around the paper. I then started to modify that with some of these heavy cement pots and urns and objects. I found a few tall, narrow, table-like objects that I built a platform for and put wheels on that, and then stacked the table with a lot of very, very heavy objects, and even the bottoms of the tables I'd fill with stones. I was casting those big roughneck trash cans that you could put like lots of yard waste and tree branches in. I was casting cement in those and then peeling away the plastic trash can just to reveal a big giant cylinder of cement that weighed about 400 or 500 pounds. My son Adam is getting a PhD in plasma physics at Princeton, and he's pretty smart about all kinds of things, and he suggested to me that I could hold a small little magnet in my hand and it could exert up to 1,000 pounds of pressure. And that was sort of a novel idea. So I started using a magnet to attract homemade ballpoint steel pens that I had created to make lines. Of course, the table that I had been working on underneath to make the magnet drawings was a little too flimsy, and the surface had too much give to it. It wasn't firm enough. The paper would jump around and the pens would jump around, so I bought a sonotube, a large casting tube that people make cement forms for foundations and things. It was a 3-foot diameter, 8-foot long tube, and I was able to get inside that and put the paper on the outside and put the magnet on the inside. The curvature of the cardboard allowed it to be very, very firm, lightweight but very firm surface. I then went on to invent another way of using that tube to create paintings. I could stretch canvas on the outside of the tube. I built a chassis that had small wheels that the tube could rotate on so that I could stand in just one place and be able to paint something as big as 9 by 12 feet. Currently, I'm creating very large scale paintings using a pendulum with, a rope tied to the ceiling with different simple, strange things like hot water bottles and watering cans full of paint of different viscosities, and coming up with some really interesting ways of making geometric lines, ellipses and parabolas and curved forms. So who knows, maybe some of these strange pieces of equipment I've made, I could bring it into the community or into a larger sphere. I sort of fondly call them my drawing machines. Became sculptures in their own right. Some people felt like the drawings I was doing actually created the sculptures instead of the other way around, instead of these sculptures creating the drawings. When I had my epiphany suddenly about making the marks on the floor, I just decided that I really didn't want my work to have anything to do with suffering anymore. I just wanted it completely liberated from that. invent. I wanted to invent a new process, a new way of creating it, a new way of looking at it. I'm trying to, as much as possible when I'm going to the studio, to free my mind and not have my mind too much loaded up with baggage and different voices or different criticisms or judgments. I try to empty those things, and I really want to create something that comes as a complete surprise to me. The process, the making of my art is now, I would only say it's fun. I really think it's fun. And I guess I wish it could be that way for everyone, or for, since I was a much younger person.